become best friends?
Yup.
You want to go do karate in the garage?
Yup.
Big part of friendship.
I like you. Do you like me?
I do like you.
You are my friend.
You're a nice young man, and I am your friend.
Shut up, Pete. I got friends now. I don't need you anymore.
You're my friend.
Friend requests.
The friend request?
Why you ain't accept my friend request, bro? But you don't want to be my friend.
Cool.
All right, let's kick it off.
So it's okay to recline, or should I be sitting
Yes,
upright?
no,
Okay, good.
you get as comfortable as you want. I've had some guests that aren't used to sitting on the floor. And I'm like, what? You guys got to practice sitting on the floor more.
Exactly, get into it.
It's good for you. Welcome to the Friend Request.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Chloe Madron, and today I'm joined by singer, songwriter, music extraordinaire, actor, podcaster, Ben Lee.
Thank you very much. Entertainer.
Entertainer.
Showbiz, baby.
Oh my God. It's good to be an all-rounder.
Well, I don't think you have any choice these days.
That's so true.
I was saying I think the music industry is kind of going through like what it went through in the 80s when MTV came in.
Yeah.
And suddenly like ugly musicians weren't allowed anymore. Like everyone had to be these like big,
Really hot.
long hair, really hot. Now it's going through the same thing with personality.
Yes.
Where like you could be a musician without a personality 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but now you can't.
Because of social media.
Yeah,
because
because
we're
you
seeing
got
it
to.
all.
That's how you're selling it. So yeah.
Oh my God. It is. It feels like that. Everyone's kind of got to be able to do everything. I remember I watched Barbie for the second time. I'm still hoping to see it 3 times in cinemas, but the second time I was with my sister and she was like, Ryan Gosling sings in this.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I was like, yeah, babe, you don't get to be a massive movie star without being able to do everything.
Did you ever hear his band, Dead Man's Bones?
No.
Halloween themed.
Oh, really?
They were all horror themed, everything. Dead
That's
Man's
so
Bones.
cool. For the listeners, if you're not watching, I have spruced the place up a little bit with a few Halloween decorations because tis the season. It's my favorite season.
Is it?
Yeah. Are you a fan?
I am. I mean, I'm a parent, so to me, it's this historically, Halloween is this process of my kids buying multiple costumes, committing to them way in advance, and then changing their minds at the last minute and it all being really stressful. So that's kind of how I associate it. But, I like it.
Okay, that's not the greatest connotation.
Yeah. But it's become more of a thing. When I was a kid in Australia, it was nothing.
I know.
I remember seeing E.T. and going, oh my God, imagine living in America with all that. But now it's like full on here, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely better because I grew up in Brisbane and it's way better in Sydney than it still is in Brisbane. But yeah, I had the same thing. I've never been to the States. I'm so excited. I'm planning a trip for next year and
cool.
I'm probably going to have to make it happen when it's Halloween because I love it. My mum and I figured out, I'm pretty sure that I've just clung to this and it wasn't that big of a piece of information in my childhood, but I was under the impression that my mum thought she was a witch and told us we were witches. So I was very confused as a child.
Okay.
I really thought that magic was real and that I had it. So I've gone with the witch theme today.
Oh, cool. And did you ever get clarification on that?
Yeah, I think she was just like leaving more formal, organized religion and still spiritual and just wanted to base
Oh, so she was like
crystals and
Wiccan.
stuff.
She was kind of like
exactly.
Wiccan. Yeah. She's a pagan.
Yeah.
She basically had some crystals around the house.
It was the 90s and she was a white woman.
She bathed them in the full moon, soak up that energy.
Exactly.
Great, burn a little sage or whatever. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but in my head, I was too young and I was just like watching Charmed. I'm like, so I'm going to be able to move things with my mind.
What a letdown.
I know. Everything ever since has been so disappointing.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Life is pretty magical, I guess.
Yeah.
How was your childhood?
My childhood.
Yeah.
Mixed. Mixed, I'd
Okay.
say. Is anyone's childhood not mixed?
No, right.
It's interesting because my daughter's 14 now. My stepdaughter's just about to be 22. So I've relived many of my feelings as I've watched them and parented them through things. And yeah, it's very hard. Being a kid is hard. And being a teenager is really hard.
It's awful.
So I don't know. I guess I look at it as this, it's like just this rite of passage we all have to pass through. But it's there's a lot to be grateful for. Like I I think about how, for instance, my mum, she's someone who I watched reinvent herself multiple times in
Yeah.
her life. Like even in when she had me, she was early 30s and she'd gone to uni for the first time
Yeah, okay.
while she was pregnant with
Yeah.
me. So I was literally born into a process of reinvention by my mother. And I think I've watched her do that now several times in her life. She's now mid 80s and has just reinvented herself over and over. And in some ways, I think she like taught me that lesson. It's like in my DNA.
Yeah.
And there's a real survival in that. So there's a lot of things like that like I'm really grateful for. But then there's just a lot of hard lessons growing up, just about what it means to be human.
Of course.
Not
yeah.
easy. Yeah.
But I think that seeing someone being able to, I really relate to that, seeing someone being able to grow through those things is so inspiring. Because, I mean, what's the alternative? Just giving up and then that's your example or the primary one.
Totally. I
That's
don't think you
cool.
realize like when you're parenting, you often put so much stock on what you tell your kids, like certain things, like what are the lessons you try to implant or the
Yeah.
moral things, and you don't realize they're watching you the whole time. And honestly, what you're doing with your life,
What you're
they're
showing
learning
them.
so much by just observing you.
Yeah.
And I think that's often more. They're learning more from observing you, particularly in the areas that you're hypocritical, where you're saying one thing and doing another.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can imagine it's quite a trip to have children of your own and just reflect back onto your own childhood and have so much more empathy for your own parents, you know? This is a friendship podcast. How did you
So wait, I
find-
heard you. So Becky was telling me about it. She was
Yeah.
explaining me because I didn't know the premise exactly. So she was saying you didn't have an easy time making, what was it, male friends, or what was the
So not even...
or just friends?
It's not
It's
even
like-
the making of the friends.
Yeah.
I've always had a weirdness around friendship. Like as a kid, I think it's because I'm bi, and that was freaky around girls. I didn't want any girl to think that I was being a creep.
Oh, so it was hard to. You felt like you were never able to then just look for friends because there was always the potential of romantic.
Yeah, to
yeah.
a degree. Because, also when you are a kid and a teenager, you're all horned up and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Ah." So I was very boy crazy and girl crazy. And I think it was partially that. But even before teen years, like I just had some shitty friends.
Okay. Yeah.
I never struggled making them, but keeping them, to be almost 30 and be like, oh, I've got a couple of friends from my childhood. Like one that's a good friend, another we talk sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was wanting to start a podcast with a couple of friends and then they kept flaking and I was like,
Right.
fuck this. This is a great premise. It's
So
all
you
the
were just kind
friendship
of like,
stuff.
it's like almost like friendship dates then. It's like you're setting things up and like you're exploring, like,
Yeah.
could we be friends? Yeah, maybe,
Pretty
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And talking to the guests about what it was like for them making friends.
Yeah.
And the different kind of ways their life have navigated like friendships around that. For you, I think that I've got a lot of questions for you around being a superstar with friendship, because that's super different and not something that everyone's going to experience.
Yeah, I mean, superstar, you lose that term, kind of use that loosely. But yeah, I do think in whatever way you have status, and for some people that's celebrity, and for other people that's being in a small town and being like good at sports or good
Yeah.
looking or,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like, or someone who's rich or someone who's really charismatic or funny, or like there's various assets that we each have that affect our social dynamic.
Yeah.
And you're always trying to figure out sort of how to use your powers for good, not evil.
Yeah.
And then also your own, the way you get glamored by believing, like I think in some ways people use the term like social climbing sort of really negatively, but in a way aspirational friendships are how we create our life, because we
Yeah.
kind of go like, I want to surround myself by people that I want to be like and that I
Yeah.
admire. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you don't want to be like the most ambitious or funniest or smartest person in your friend group.
Oh my God.
Like that's
Yeah.
a real dud situation. It's like you getting dragged down.
It's also just so egotistical. You'd get so tired, surely.
Yeah. So it's all very interesting, I think, who we surround ourselves by and what what are those moments where you realize you've outgrown a friend too are really interesting.
Yeah, totally. And I think how you deal with that. Have you got anything that comes to mind? Like when you've outgrown a friend, do you confront them? Do you just let it go?
I've done both, and it's interesting. That's one with parenting that I found myself like, now my attitude whenever it's with the kids is like, just gently pull away, slowly, don't make a drama. But especially teenage girls never want to hear that, you know. I've done both. There's been times like, for instance, like I remember going through a period, I had one friend in my early 20s who died of a heroin overdose, and I felt the need to separate myself immediately and sort of violently from that group of friends that I felt had created an unsafe situation that had led to that.
Yeah.
I just felt like I'm not going to live a life where I have friends dying of heroin overdoses.
Yeah.
Like, look, it happens,
Yeah.
but you can severely lower the odds of it happening by being more selective about who you hang out with. But interestingly, then over the years, then there are people who sort of got their acts together that I reconnected with.
Yeah, okay.
So there's been situations like that. And then there's been, I think one of the things that creative people go through sometimes is having chaotic people around them.
Yeah.
And I quite like
As
chaotic
fodder.
people.
Yeah.
Well, they're fun. You know, I quite like chaotic people, and especially like, I've always loved chaotic women because they're like creative and interesting. And, you know, I don't know, it's probably like my mum in some way, or my sisters, or, you know, but I definitely like whenever these women come out, like in pop culture, like Julia Fox or Caroline Calloway or whatever, I find them very charming. Like I always, or Courtney Love, you know, I'm always like, yeah, I'm fully on board. I will read this interview. I'll listen to this podcast. And I know I'm totally glamored by like an archetype. But I've also been in situations in my life where I've just been like, there's too much chaos here. Like, it's like, I'm putting energy into the person, the situations and the chaos this person's creating when I should be putting it into myself.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, there's so many of those kind of things.
Totally. And in those situations, is it that it's getting too close? Like those friendships are too close with the chaos?
It might be. It might just be like it gets too real.
Yeah,
like
okay.
things are like fun from a distance.
Yes.
And then you kind of get into like, it's real life. I've also had people outgrow me.
Yeah.
And it's like, so sad. It so sucks to be on the other end of it.
It sucks so hard.
You kind of don't want to force someone into a corner where they have to say it.
No.
So you kind of try and like take the L.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really embarrassing. And you kind of have people I've like reached for and like keep reaching out to over the course of like a couple of years. I'm like, I need to read that book. He's just not that into you.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't know. It's hurt me in the past deeper than any like romantic or sexual rejection. Friendship rejection, I'm like, oh, we don't even need to be that close. You know, you have fewer boxes that need to be ticked for a friend. It's like, what am I doing wrong?
But have you ever in a professional circumstance had to fire anybody?
No.
Because it's similar. And one of the things about firing people is that in some ways it's not personal. Like, look, sometimes there's horrible things that happen in the workplace and it is personal.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, for instance, I had a manager who it took me like 5 years to get the courage to fire him.
Oh my God, that's so long.
And it was almost like this codependent, like almost like abusive thing where you're like wrapped in a cycle.
Jesus.
But what I realized was that I'm actually like preventing him from fulfilling his destiny.
Yeah.
By like, it's like being in a relationship that's like not right and you hold on to it. And I kind of now have a more philosophical approach to it, to like things ending. I actually have a new song I wrote about past relationships called Lovers. It's going to be on my next record. And one of the lines in it is, let me see if I remember. To all the lovers that you hate now, and the ones that became friends, this is a song for all the lovers that taught you things end. And it's like a part of life, like learning that things end and they're out of your control.
Yeah.
And I try and now when I feel, it's like with collaboration, these windows open, these like magical windows in people's lives where it's almost like a Venn diagram, like it crosses over and you can do something together there.
Yeah.
And then it's like, can like drift apart, like in a way that's like not in anyone's control.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the most dignified part is just coming into acceptance of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
letting
yeah.
people go at the time when it's not even them. It's like the cosmos pulling
Yeah.
you apart.
Man, I mean, that is a deep and powerful philosophy that could be applied to any kind of ending, right?
But it's hard
I
because
love
sometimes you have to
that.
fight for things, but you can't control them. You know, and I think that's been a really like big lesson for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle to grasp with that. Like, it's the classic people think that when a romantic relationship ends, it's a failure. And it's like, no, but what are you talking about? You both got to learn so much.
Yeah.
And now you get to go and be on your own and doing something else.
Yeah, and then it's just one of those things
awesome.
where like there comes a point where if you notice a pattern and it's like the fourth time the same type of thing has happened, and then you go like, okay, maybe the pattern's like me.
Yes.
But for the most part, especially when you're young, you know, you gotta honor the ebb and flow of human interaction because it's what allows for the magic to occur is the fact that you can't force it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's powerful. I really like that. I think a lot of the requestees that listen to this show, a lot of them are younger and struggling. You know, it's a friendship podcast, so they want to learn stuff, and I think that's a perfect lesson.
I remember Ben Folds saying something to me once that like I was hanging out with him. He was already in his, I think, early 40s. I was in my early 20s when the Strokes' first album came out.
Okay.
And I was like, what do you think about it? He was like, every song is about my friends. He's like, when you become an adult and you have a family, he's like, I don't have any friends. I've just got my family, you know? And it is interesting how there are certain times of your life where friendship becomes more and less of a priority.
Yeah,
and I
totally.
think for me, like now my kids are older, friendship is becoming again more central to my life.
Because of theirs.
Well, because when they're little, you're like looking after them. So like you don't have as much
Yeah.
room. But now it's like they're becoming like young adults. It's like, oh, we need time with our friends more. You know what I mean? So it just sort of shifts.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, yeah, well, look, my dad's my best friend. My dad, my boyfriend, or my cat. They all kind of go between that best friend.
Good
title.
trifecta.
It's the best, but they're all family, you know? Ah, that's cool. Okay. So I actually heard on your old podcast the other day, you were talking about having a punchable face. And I want to know if that's where's that come from?
I guess what I meant by that was I've always been someone that provokes strong reactions in people.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't really mean it's my face. Like it is kind of, but it's also just like what I say and what I represent. Like I'm someone who's both a non-conformist, but also a performer and needy for attention and validation. And like, you know, it's a volatile cocktail for some people.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've always been willing to make mistakes, like I'm not a polished person. I've become more polished as I've gotten older, but I've never believed in waiting until you figure things out to do things.
Yeah.
Like that's why I started at 14 and why like, you know, why I like social media, because it's like you just do a lot of it and whatever. Some of it works, some doesn't.
Yeah.
So my whole attitude has always been very like casual and like lo-fi in that way.
Yeah.
But as a result, it's very vulnerable. And a lot of people who are more controlled or more guarded, they find people that are more vulnerable sort of threatening.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I
Yeah.
think it's like that. Like the vulnerable person is like, they're an easy target.
yeah, totally.
So I think in some ways that's what I meant.
Were you like that as a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I always just spoke up and just went for it with whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd fall flat on my face.
Of course.
And that was, I was sort of okay with it. Like, it's funny. I think about, like my career has been 3 decades long, like
Yeah.
30 years.
God damn.
And like, I'm still like I'm not there yet. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of where I want to be. And I
Yeah.
think where, I don't know, like there's a lot I'm still just learning, like a lot. And I think it's taken me, like sometimes when people are like, wow, I can't believe you started young. I was like, yeah, because I'm like sort of like a slow learner who has to learn everything by experience. Like I'm not good at assimilating information from other people's experiences.
Yeah, okay.
So I just had to do it all myself.
That's great. Make your own mistakes.
Yeah, and then you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, the things I know from experience.
Yeah. And that would rub people the wrong way, especially when you're younger, being vulnerable because of the, toxicity that so many people grow up with of don't try.
Yeah.
Don't explore things.
It's clumsy. Because you're like, if you're going to try a lot, at best, you're going to have a batting average of 50%. At best.
Yeah.
And what that means as an artist or as a performer is like taking a stand for the wrong thing at least half the time. The wrong feeling, the wrong expression of that feeling, the wrong... it's all like kind of wrong, And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you find out what's right for you slowly,
God, I do feel that deeply with an artistic expression. Like I did music for my entire life and started doing comedy 5 years ago and was still kind of dabbling with music. I still released some things and whatever, but I'm like better at it because I've been doing it for longer. But I just don't think this is working for me. I don't think this is the kind of expression that I gel with or that people gel with. And
then you get into comedy where literally you have to fail your way to having a good set.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like no other job where the public failure is so baked into getting the thing right.
Yeah,
like most other jobs you practice in private.
It's crazy.
You can't practice in private as a comedian. It's like, it's an incredibly vulnerable art form.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And for some reason I was like, yeah, that's better. That's what I'm more comfortable with instead of this thing that I actually trained to be good at. Oh my God. It's an interesting need, I think, that because it's across the board for artists, performing artists, I'd say more so, but that just deep desire for attention.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know. You feel free to tell me if you don't want to talk about this, but I had heard you speaking about it, joining cults. I think we spoke about it when I interviewed you for my bloody job a while back. I want to know a little bit about joining a cult.
Yeah.
Making friends with people in a cult.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things to give that whole journey sort of context is I didn't go to university and I started my career at 14. So the place where I experimented really was like in my spiritual life, Cool. That for me was I was going to be like, it's like where I asked fundamental questions about who I am, what meaning was to me, what I wanted out of life. Like that was sort of just this space that I went really into. And I'm sort of glad that I took that space for myself.
Yeah.
That wasn't about being a performer.
Yeah.
Because I think, history is really littered with performers that never found places to take space to find out who they are. And again, it involved lots of mistakes. And one of the big things I learned was that I was wanting to find somebody who would tell me how to do life.
Yeah, okay.
I really wanted that.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that to a degree. I think we all love getting a new self-help book where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to implement this. I'm going to write morning pages, or I'm going to only talk in nonviolent communication, or I'm going to, there's like so many of these things. And they're like,
I'm currently flattening my glucose curve.
There you go. Or you're on Instagram and you see Esther Perel doing so. I don't know. It's like everyone's like self-help it's a huge industry because people are so hungry to give up their autonomy for a more proven method than just what their instincts are,
Yeah.
So I really thoroughly explored that in a few different situations where like, it was kind of like one thing leading to another, where you're looking for like the perfect system for living. And then you sort of do one for a bit. I mean, it's like a health kick,
Yeah.
And then you go like, oh my God, actually, I'm not working on my core. And you're like, oh my God, but I'm not cutting out gluten. And it just goes, you go in deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So it's basically that kind of thing. It's just my taste is a little more existential. You know?
That's cool. Was it actually to a degree of like living? This is just completely stereotyped in my head. Living on a commune and with beautiful people around.
No, I never lived on a commune. All the few different things I explored, like one was a Hindu guru that I would travel to.
Okay.
And there was like an ashram there, but you just visited.
Yeah.
One was earlier than that was a Chinese Taoist sort of a martial art, like Qigong teacher.
Yeah.
But that was in New York City and I would go to lessons,
okay.
everything. And then the last one was like a Peruvian, like Gnostic ayahuasca cult that we would do retreats and stuff. But or they were all, meanwhile, I always had like a home life. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
And you clearly were getting a lot out of that. You say all three of those I'm immediately interested in going. It sounds amazing. I'd love to do an ayahuasca retreat. Was there any kind of sinister intentions? Like, people talk about these things like, oh, someone's running it just so that they want to make money. Was there any of that?
See, I think of things like sex and money. Like, sure, we're human beings.
Yeah.
So anytime you find an institution, there'll be someone taking financial and sexual advantage of whatever power they have in that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think there's a deeper form of abuse that happens in churches, cults, and that's more to do with someone placing themselves between an individual and their own internal sense of guidance. You know what I mean? So I look at like this thing we call God or enlightenment or whatever it is as like an experience that everyone is entitled to in whatever form you think of it as. We're all entitled to it. We can all access it anytime. It's there. It's part of who we are. And we're all equally connected to it.
Yeah.
However you view it, love, whatever, interconnectedness. What gurus do is they craft a situation where you might be more likely to generate an experience like that.
Yep. Okay.
And then they take credit for it.
Yep.
So I think that is actually almost like the most sinister thing you can do, because like abuses like financial and sexual abuse are awful, but they're also like, once you see them, they happened.
Yeah.
These other forms of like abuse are like almost like psychic vampirism that you feel crazy for thinking they're happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
totally.
It's like way more complicated.
Oh my God.
And I think the need of the person who's doing that form of abuse is much more complicated.
Yeah.
I think it's getting off in a way that we don't even yet have words for.
Jesus.
And I think but you can look at the history of humanity and clearly this need for specific type of power, of needing to be the god to someone else, that is like baked into our pathology as a species.
It
Like
happens over
we've
and
done
over.
that to each other over and over and over. Now the people have forming language for it and narcissistic personalities and all that, but I don't know, some of that resonates with me, some of it doesn't. I think there is a power source that comes from being looked at with devotion.
Yeah.
That is a power source that it's almost like, and I think this with like people like Harvey Weinstein and stuff too, it's like, it's the sex, but it's not just, it's the power.
It's the power, yeah.
It's the power.
Yeah.
And I think the way that people thrive in those dynamics is by leeching power and devotion and love from people, you know?
Yeah. Can I ask you, you would have had a glimpse of that. You've got a huge fan base and have had a career for 30 years. How do you find that balance to go, oh, I can see how these people are looking at me with complete devotion. How do you step away from that and not be seduced by it?
Well, part of it is just the transparency of talking about it.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, for instance, because I know I've been on the other end of these dynamics, if I can talk about that and be open about it, I do think in some ways I leave myself less vulnerable to being a perpetrator of it. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's how you get that like wolf in sheep's clothing thing.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, if you say it, you can actually then do it because no one's onto you.
Yeah.
But I think it's more just that like, I know that the seed of those people is in me because anyone who's ever wanted fame wants that. So I can only look at those people. And that's why like I've never been big on like naming these gurus. Like it's not a secret. Like if you ask me, I'll tell you. But I kind of don't want to send people on Google searches onto things that they're going to like, they could end up into it. You know what I mean?
That's so true.
So I think of it more in terms of like, look, these people are fucked up.
Yep.
But it's in me too. It's in you.
Yeah.
It's in each of us.
Yeah.
We have to be aware as a species that we can abuse each other in this way. And I don't know, just be onto ourselves. So I don't know. So I think I've definitely, I know I've had like acolytes that I've been like subtly and subconsciously manipulative of.
Yeah, okay.
I know that there's people I've like withheld approval from because I know that them looking at me as someone that would give approval is like puts me in a position of power. Like, you know, I'm a human. Like I've been in all kinds of dysfunctional relationships.
Totally. And it happens in everyone's life.
Yeah.
Like,
and you don't get to choose it. You play it out unconsciously.
yes.
So I don't know. I just know I know it's real and I go, it is what it is. I'm going to try not to do that.
Yeah. Shit. Man, you can really understand where the whole mythology of a devil comes from, right? Or this like Satan. It's like, there's this terrible stuff that's in all of us.
And it's easier to personify it as a devil.
Yeah.
Than to
try
own
and
it as something that's in each of us.
Yeah, far out. Oh, very well articulated. Okay, so when you were really heavily into any of these three different cults, I think it's probably oversimplifying it.
Well, it was a whole chapter. It was a whole
chapter.
exploration, you know.
How did your close friends feel about this?
I think I'm quite a convincing salesman for whatever I'm into.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
like I am naturally charismatic and I'm sort of a person of influence.
Yeah.
So I think I always managed for the most part that even if people sort of didn't agree with me, they were like, he's enjoying it. He's
having
in a
fun.
truth for himself, you know?
Yep.
So I think in that way I prevented people being concerned.
That's good.
In certain ways. And even they would get behind me. Like my family would be like, it's so good you're into this thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I was never into anything that was like, I don't know, with Scientology, say like you hear about how they're bullying and all that kind of stuff. And you go like, this is like dark behavior, you know, but I was never into anything like that. So
yeah. And what you were doing, they weren't like actively trying to get you away from
But
your friends,
honestly, it
apparently.
wasn't until the last one where, because by that I was like parenting and I was like into some pretty esoteric, weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then you realize you're like imparting it to your kids. And that's when me and Ione, my wife, we had a lot of like intense conversations.
Yeah.
Because she was like, this isn't good, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think I'm really grateful that she stood by me. It was hard for her. I remember she tells a story of she went to see a therapist and the therapist was like, okay, well, let's go to the basics. Is he fulfilling his parenting responsibilities? And she was like, yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, is he showing up to work? She was like, yeah.
Yep.
And the therapist was like, be patient.
Oh, wow.
Like it's a human.
Yeah.
And most of the weird shit we get into, we leave behind at some point. And if you love someone and you can tolerate it, be patient.
That's some really good advice.
But if they're like fucking up on a practical level
Yes.
where they're doing unsafe things and making the family unsafe. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, both me and Ione are kind of like old fashioned in that way that we sort of see marriage as something that you like are going to go through problems in.
Yeah.
You know, which is like sort of like, I don't know, neither of us had the feeling that like it has to be perfect the whole time.
Yeah.
It's more like it's a long game.
Yeah.
You know, and like we want to win in the end. That's sort of, and we have a great marriage, but I don't know. I don't think we ever wanted to break up over things that we could see through.
Yeah,
You know, so,
yeah, that's really nice. It's very inspiring. I am. I think I've shocked myself in that I never really wanted like a romantic relationship. It wasn't just a part of goals or anything. But I'm so happily in love, love of my life, getting married, all of this.
Amazing.
It's so nice, and it is a really funny thing because I have none of that like emotional attachment to marriage.
Right.
Because, you know, child of several divorces.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That'll do it. But I still so deeply am like, no, I just think that you can get through stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you know,
Look, if you both want to.
exactly,
Like the
yes.
only recipe for a good marriage is two people wanting it to be a good marriage.
Yeah.
As soon as one person even is iffy on that,
Yeah.
the whole thing's going to fall apart.
Oh, fuck.
But if you both want to figure it out, you can figure it out.
That's really
You know?
nice.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. I do because oh man, I listen to just every different kind of podcast under the sun. So I do hear a lot of the dump him, just any little
Yeah,
thing, dump
yeah.
him, and I'm like, there is something to be said for just hanging on.
I mean, there's like, I've had like a few marriages around me. It's probably only been 2 that I've been like, you guys should get divorced.
Oh,
like,
really?
Like where it's so bad
Yeah.
and so imbalanced.
Yeah.
In the sense that you have one partner putting in tons of effort
Yeah.
and the other person just wantonly like not.
Yeah.
And at that point, like I would never say it, but I would think it. And when they tell me, I'd be like, good.
I've had this come up a bit lately, actually. People saying if you should tell your friends to break up.
I've never done that, but I
No.
have at the moment where they've said they're going to. I've said, look, I'm never going to tell you what I think you should do,
Yeah.
but I support you.
Yeah.
In this moment,
Yeah.
you leaving this person sounds like a good idea for you. Yeah.
That's a very diplomatic way to deal with that.
You let them know without hitting it on the head too much. You know?
Okay, so now this is our Halloween episode, and I wanted to, I do know that you've got so much experience with spirituality. I wanted to know if you had any spooky stories that you'd feel like sharing.
Yeah, I do have a few.
Oh,
I guess I have 2 that come to mind. My sister used to have a house in Maroubra, and she's 18 years older than me. So I was still a kid and I would go there. And we were sitting at dinner one night and the taps in the kitchen suddenly turned on full. Like it was like quiet and then
God.
suddenly it was like, shh. And I was like, what's that?
oh my God.
And my sister just looked at me. She goes, we'll tell you after. Because the kids were there. And I was like, what? She was like, we'll talk about it after. And she gave me that look. And then when the kids went to bed, she was like, we got a ghost. I was like, what?
so
and-
annoyed.
And they apparently had these, like the toys would turn on in the night. And interestingly, this went on with all kinds of things, all kinds of disruptions. But then they did a full renovation that was like a remodel, like a tear down. And the ghost never came back after that.
Okay.
And then the other one was once I was... In my 20s, I was staying at the Chateau Marmont, which is like a famous
I know
Hollywood
of it.
hotel that's like famously haunted. And I was lying in the bed there with my girlfriend at the time, and I saw in the middle of the night, I sat up in the bed and I saw someone go really fast across like the entrance to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly felt a hand tapping me and I woke up
Yeah.
and my girlfriend said to me, there was just someone in the room.
Oh my God. Yuck.
So I'd like dreamt something and she'd seen or felt something.
Fuck.
That's pretty weird, right?
It's so weird.
But I had a friend tell me, a friend's mum said to me once, I said something about ghosts. She said, they're just echoes.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Isn't that cool?
It's really cool. It's like I was big into like I still am Futurama and stuff. And like any of this sci-fi sort of shit feels like it can explain it in a way that makes me a lot less scared. I'm like, time is freaking an illusion and constantly happening, and why can't there just be things that glitch a little bit in front of us, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've had tons of experiences that are like you just can't quite explain. Like I remember I had a friend.
I'm so
Sorry,
sorry.
I can't
The
quite figure out
skeleton.
how to just. I'm just like, almost comfortable. Shit. Oh man, I'm trashing the place. So I think it's also this thing is dangling on me a little bit.
so
So,
sorry.
No, it's fine. This is life. I had this other. This isn't a ghost, but I was sitting talking to a friend, and sometimes you're in like a real deep connection with someone, and you just feel like intuitive, I guess. The things you're saying are like right to each other, So I was talking to my friend, and she was talking about being creatively blocked, and the way she was standing, like all I could say was like she looked like a harp. Like she looked like a harp, and like I just was going like, well, her body looks like a harp. And I just said something about a harp just because like I didn't know what there was going, and she went, what? And I was like, what? And she said, her mum had bought a harp to learn it when she was a little kid and put it in the middle of their living room, and she'd never played it. And it became this symbol of blocked creativity.
Oh, God.
So it was like connected to the conversation.
Yeah.
So like all these experiences, it's like, we can't really explain these things, and they don't really like mean anything, but they do tend to give us a feeling that like, there's some kind of connection we have. I don't know. So I just think
it makes me feel happy. I don't know. I used to be very strictly atheist when I was a teenager because, fuck everything. And I'm just so not that anymore.
But I think you can vacillate in a day. Like I feel like
Exactly.
I have moments of a day where I'm deeply atheist and I get myself through the task at hand.
Yeah.
Through intense self-will because I believe that's what's going to do it.
Yeah.
And atheism helps me profoundly. And then I have other moments when I'm scared or something and I find myself like praying. I don't know. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Oh my
I don't even know.
God. I've been manifesting up a storm and I'm like, it's just praying. It's the same thing.
So I just kind of think of it as like, it's almost like, I think there's like all this pressure on us to like join a party almost. And I think it's okay to like vacillate and not know.
Yeah.
And like we don't need to explain, like I don't need to whittle down my beliefs into like a catchphrase or a name for it or something. Like, I don't know who I am. I'm a different person 50 times a day.
I'd
like,
love to hear
why
this.
don't we just like, why don't I just let myself be that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I wish more people were okay with it. I did have a spooky story, but I'm just checking the time. I asked some listeners for spooky stories, but this one, they were kind of lackluster. I thought I'd still have a...
They're spookish.
Exactly. Let's see. All right. It's just the fact that this guy replied with, I always saw a ghost for years in my house. And I said, can you tell me more? He said, I don't want to upset him. I can't write the story.
I think he's making that up. That sounds like,
Well, then he
like
sent,
a cheeky internet person.
then he sent a photo of one of the old plague doctors, right? And said,
Is that what the guys look like?
this is what it looked like. He said, I always saw it there. And it was on the phone with my friend. I was on the phone with my friend, sorry. And it was behind me. And then my sister and my mum saw it. And then I'm like, what are you talking about? Another one I saw just said played with a Ouija board and the spirit said leave now.
Oh yeah, I've did some Ouija board stuff too in
Oh,
my 20s. You know, yeah.
Man, it's scary. My because when my mum was really in her phase, I tried to do a Ouija board at school.
Yeah.
At that time, and I got in trouble because she didn't want me playing with bad spirits.
Oh, you were like a Catholic school or something?
No.
Oh, your
My
mum got you in
got
trouble.
me in trouble, and it wasn't because it was like weird or anything. She was like, "No, I don't want you playing
Why
with
don't
bad
you be
spirits."
discerning with the spirits you
It's
interacted
so
with?
smart.
Yeah.
Someone else said that both their mum and grandfather died on Halloween, and now they're completely paranoid that either them or someone they know will die every Halloween, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's not really spooky though. That's just like sad.
No, it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
super sad,
Yeah, yeah.
and also it's like you know, that thing of just the universe, the world around you, creating your own fears.
Yeah.
It's Just our
You're
little
haunting
brains.
yourself there.
Yeah. My favorite though was farted and scared a 9-week-old kitten I just adopted.
Aw, that's a
What do
sweet
you think
story.
about that?
Is sad. Sad for the kitten.
Bit disappointing with
Yeah,
the spooky
yeah.
stories,
Oh, well.
honestly.
Yeah.
But I do have some slumber party games for us to
Okay.
play if you're up for it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So,
I think I'm having a cat allergy. Do you have a cat?
oh my God, yes.
It's okay.
Oh my God,
I'll
are you
get fine.
okay?
Yeah, I'll take an antihistamine later. I just feel like my scratchiness
I'm
in my
so
throat.
sorry.
Oh, good. It's okay.
Oh, Jesus, I'm going to kill you. Oh my God. That's spooky.
Yeah, exactly. I'm being haunted by a cat.
Okay, well, we can wrap up
All right.
super
Yeah, no
quickly.
worries.
You want to play the sleepover
Yeah, let's do
games?
it. Let's do it.
Okay. First one, would you rather?
Okay.
Would you rather never be able to cover someone else's song or never be able to buy new or used but new to you clothes?
Wait, you can never buy clothes again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to cover anyone's songs that badly. I want clothes.
It's not as hard as I thought it
No,
could.
that's an easy one. Now, if you said never again play music,
Yeah.
that would be much harder.
Or
I
never
don't think.
write a song.
Yeah, I think then I would choose the
Clothes.
The clothes. I'd get rid of
Yeah.
the clothes.
I know you're a very fashionable guy.
I like clothes, but I can also I'm not gonna. There's a limit. You know what I mean?
Totally. Okay. Would you rather be? This one also feels pretty obvious, but would you rather be a zombie or a ghost?
A ghost, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a ghost you could be friendly.
Yeah.
A zombie, you kind of got one option. It's not good. Like you
It's
gotta
so
scare
scary.
people. Yeah.
It's so scary,
Yeah.
and I don't think that they're, even if ghosts are trapped and they can't move on, zombies can't even express that.
No, yeah,
Ooh.
there's nothing fun about zombies.
Okay. Easy answer. All right. Next game, Fuck, Marry, Kill.
Okay.
Fuck, Marry, Kill, Rocky Horror Picture Show,
Mm-hmm.
Halloween, the movie with Michael Myers, and Scream.
I mean, Rocky Horror Show is the only sexy one.
I'd
it?
say Scream's pretty sexy.
I've actually never seen it.
Oh my God.
Well, because by the time Scream came out, I was like in my 20s, and it just felt like I don't know, like sort of a corny horror movie or something. Or like,
It
okay.
is. It's a slasher, but it's so good.
So I would say I would kill Halloween because I think it would like it the most. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like the most
Totally.
violent in a way.
Yep.
I would probably marry Scream because
Yeah?
it just seems like kind of like a mature. It's just got like a more family entertainment side of it. It's like
What
wholesome.
are you talking about? Rocky Horror is so much more wholesome than Scream.
But I think Rocky Horror Show is all about being a perv in a way, isn't it? It's like super kinky.
it's so cute about
So
it, though.
Yeah, I know it is. Oh, look, it's very wholesome. In the scheme of things now, it doesn't seem that perverse.
True.
But it's about living liberated
Yes.
and, so it's probably the best in bed.
Yes, great point.
yeah.
Great point. All I was thinking was like the very attractive actors in Scream.
Oh, you were thinking about the equality. I didn't think about that.
No, that's on
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
I was ruining it with my own perversions.
I was like personifying the movies as a human.
I like it. That's what you got to go with these
Yeah,
things. Another Fuck, Marry, Kill, a vampire, a werewolf, and a witch.
Well, witches, I think, are sexy because I think they're like the witch is the sort of supernaturalized vision of chaotic women, which
Yep.
is what I said I already like.
you're already into
so,
it.
like, definitely fuck them.
But they could also be so handy for marrying.
Oh, that's true. You mean just being able to cook a good brew?
Yeah, and like snap your fingers and have, I don't know.
I know. Well,
whatever you
vampires.
want.
I guess the werewolf. I just don't see them being that practical.
That's true.
So I'd get rid of them. I guess
Kill the
I'd marry
werewolf.
the vampire, but you'd have to be nocturnal.
Yeah.
So that would be a tough call.
Or you could just see them for a few hours a day.
That's true. Little overlap.
Yeah.
Little dusk
Have
cocktail.
very independent
Yeah,
relationship,
I like
you know.
that. Martini hour type thing.
Really good answers. Okay. The last game is truth or dare.
Okay.
So you get to choose
Okay.
between truth or dare.
I think I'll do truth. I can't imagine being on a film podcast what the dare is going to be. I might regret it.
That's fair. That's
Yeah,
fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah, yeah.
People don't trust me in my dares. It was going to be good, but
Okay,
it's
okay,
fine.
okay.
The truth is, because you've got your wonderful podcast, Weirder Together, what's the weirdest live performance you've ever done?
The weirdest one I've ever done was when I filled in as bass player for this band called the Frogs, who were... It was an interesting time in the history of alternative music and sort of leftist thinking where the part of... It's so hard to relate to now in this time of like where everything's more politically correct. But the idea was that there was something in being transgressive and offensive that actually blew the sort of like the fear of things away or something. It took the
Yeah.
power away from things like violence and misogyny and
Yeah.
racism by
Yeah.
like being them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this band like specialized in that, and they kind of knew I was a fan, and they actually rang my doorbell. It was the week after 9/11 in New York.
Oh my
And their
God.
bass player hadn't been able to get on the plane because he didn't have the right ID from
Yeah.
Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And they knew I liked them, so they were like, "Do you want to play bass?" So we played at Knitting Factory, which was like 6 blocks from Ground Zero. And they played in angel wings. I wore these giant angel wings, like Victoria's Secret
Yeah.
kind of ones, and like this see-through kind of chiffon shirt. And we opened with "I Feel the Earth Move Under My Feet." This is like
Awesome.
right after 9/11. And it was
Jesus.
like, it was just like so odd. But it was interesting. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Cool.
Thank you for coming and doing the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'll let you go so that you don't die of
Yeah,
a cat
go.
allergy.
Take a Zyrtec.
I'm so sorry.
all right.
Do you want to let the listeners know everything that's going on with you and where they can listen to you?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't have anything specific to plug, but I'm like always making things and
Yeah.
doing things. So I would say just go to my socials, Bentley Music, and
Yeah.
then me and my wife, I only have this company called Weirder Together where we put out podcasts and music and do events, and we do all kinds of fun things there. Again, not plugging anything specifically, but just dive in. If you
go
like
look at
me,
it all.
dive in.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of activities and content you can enjoy.
Beautiful. And then new music.
Yeah, coming
soon.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. Wonderful, lovely requesties. Thank you for listening. You know where to find me. Go check out Patreon. I should plug it, but
Yeah, do it.
it's exciting. Get into it. We'll have more spooky stories. It's going to be great. Thank you for listening. Bye.